I opened the email at 8:15 on a Tuesday morning, March 15th. My coffee was still hot, steam rising from the mug Richard gave me in 1995. White ceramic with blue flowers chipped at the handle. I was sitting at the kitchen table where we'd eaten breakfast for 42 years. The laptop was open to my inbox. One new message. Subject line, Board Decision, L. Morrison. I clicked, read it once, then again. The words didn't change. Dear Linda, after careful review of recent financial discrepancies within the Morrison Garden Club, the board has voted unanimously to remove you from your position as founder emeritus, effective immediately. You are prohibited from attending club meetings, events, or accessing club facilities pending the outcome of an investigation into financial misconduct. Total amount currently unaccounted for, $45,000. The board takes these allegations seriously and has retained legal counsel. You will be contacted by our attorney within 7 business days. Sincerely, the Morrison Garden Club Board of Directors. I set the laptop down, picked up my coffee. It was cold now. $45,000. Financial misconduct. My name, Linda Morrison. The same name on the brass plaque in the community center. Morrison Garden Club, founded 2004 by Linda Morrison and Margaret Hayes. I looked at the wall across from the table. The photo I'd hung there 3 years ago, our 20th anniversary celebration. 53 members, all of us standing in the community garden. I was in the center, holding the ceremonial shovel we used for plantings. Margaret beside me, Dorothy on my left, Ashley in the back row, smiling. Ashley. I scrolled to the bottom of the email, the signature line. On behalf of the board, Ashley Chen Morrison, Treasurer. My daughter-in-law, Michael's wife. I read the email a third time, looking for something I'd missed, a mistake, an explanation, a line that said, "Just kidding, Mom Linda." There wasn't one. I'd founded that club 20 years ago, after Richard died, April 2004, heart attack in the garden by the tomato plants. I held him while we waited for the ambulance, 20 minutes, the longest 20 minutes of my life. 6 months later, I couldn't get out of bed most days. Margaret came by, my neighbor, 3 houses down. She said, "Linda, we need you. There's a community garden project. Just come to one meeting." I went. 6 of us sitting in my living room, planning perennial beds for the community center. Margaret brought coffee cake. We drew diagrams on graph paper, argued about rose varieties, and for the first time since Richard died, I felt useful. 20 years. 50 members now. $15,000 raised annually through plant sales. 3 community gardens, a scholarship fund, a newsletter, a waiting list, my life's work. And now, this email. 2 paragraphs, 117 words. Effective immediately. I sat there at the kitchen table until my coffee went completely cold, until the morning sun moved across the floor and disappeared behind the neighbor's fence, until my hands stopped shaking enough to close the laptop. 20 years, gone in 2 sentences. I should explain how the garden club started, how I ended up here at my kitchen table, reading an email that accused me of stealing from something I built. Richard died on April 3, 2004, Saturday afternoon. We were working in the garden together, our weekend ritual for 37 years. He was pruning the tomato plants. I was deadheading the roses. He said my name once, Linda. Then he collapsed. Heart attack. Massive, the doctors said later. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. I was 61. Widow, empty house. Our son Michael was 22, in medical school in Boston, busy with rotations, exams, his whole life ahead of him. I didn't want to burden him with my grief. So I stayed home, stopped answering the phone, let the garden grow wild, stopped going to church, to the grocery store, to anywhere that required getting dressed and pretending I was fine. Margaret Hayes lived 3 houses down, same street for 30 years. She'd lost her husband in 2002. She knew. One morning in October, 6 months after Richard died, she showed up at my door with coffee cake and wouldn't leave until I let her in. We sat at this kitchen table. She didn't ask how I was doing, didn't offer platitudes about time healing wounds. She said, "Linda, the town's planning a community garden. They need someone to organize it. I told them you would." I said no. I couldn't even take care of my own garden. She said, "That's fine. Meeting's Thursday at 10. I'll pick you up." She did. Drove me to the community center. 5 other women were there, all of us over 60, all of us widows or empty nesters looking for purpose. We sat in a circle, talked about perennial beds, grant applications, volunteer schedules, and for the first time in 6 months, I felt like myself again. We called it the Morrison Garden Club. Named after Richard, Margaret insisted. "He loved that garden, Linda. Let's make it his legacy, too." That was 20 years ago. We started with 6 members. Now we have 65. We've raised over $200,000 through plant sales, fundraisers, and grants. We built 3 community gardens, started a scholarship fund for horticulture students, published a monthly newsletter, created a waiting list because membership was full. I gave everything to that club, not just time, money, $8,000 of my own savings, the first 2 years of supplies, mulch, seedlings, tools, everything. I didn't ask for reimbursement. My backyard became the test garden where new members learned to propagate roses and divide perennials. Every Saturday morning for 3 years, teaching beginners. $3,000 from annual plant sale proceeds. I donated back to the club every single year. $12,000 in grant writing. Unpaid hours researching foundations, writing applications. I wrote 14 grants over 20 years. 11 were funded. The community garden land, I negotiated the lease with the town myself. 4 months of meetings with the Parks Department, the Town Council, the Planning Board. Total investment, $23,000 and 20 years of Saturday mornings, Thursday meetings, Sunday planning sessions. I thought I was building something permanent, a legacy, something that would outlive me. Margaret was my co-founder, my best friend. She lived 3 houses down, texted me every morning at 8. Coffee? 1 word. 20 years. She brought coffee cake to every Thursday meeting. Same recipe her mother taught her. When I was sick, she watered my garden. When she was traveling, I collected her mail. That's friendship. My son Michael became an ER doctor, married Ashley Chen 6 years ago. I liked her immediately. Smart, charming, good with people. She had an MBA, worked in nonprofit management. When she moved to town with Michael, she wanted to get involved in the community. I suggested the garden club. Ashley joined 3 years ago. Enthusiastic, helpful, full of ideas. "We should modernize," she said. "Get on social media, set up online fundraising, streamline the finances." She volunteered to be treasurer after Betty Simmons retired. The board voted unanimously. I was thrilled. My daughter-in-law continuing the work, family legacy. Ashley was good at it. Set up online banking, created spreadsheets, moved everything to QuickBooks. "You don't need to worry about the boring paperwork anymore, Mom Linda," she said. "I've got it handled." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my son's wife. She called me Mom Linda. She brought expensive wine to family dinners. Chateau Neuf du Pape, nice labels. Michael teased her. "Trying to impress my mother?" She'd laugh. "Only the best for family." I should have paid attention when Ashley eliminated the dual signature policy. We'd always required 2 board members to sign checks over $500. Betty and I had done it that way for 18 years. Transparency, accountability. Ashley said it was inefficient. "I'm the treasurer. I have an MBA. You need to trust me to do my job." The board agreed. They were younger members, most of them, 40s and 50s, tech savvy. They liked Ashley's modern approach. I didn't argue. I didn't want to seem like the old guard, resistant to change. And she was family. You trust family. That was my mistake. The red flag I ignored. Michael called me once 2 years ago. Said Ashley was stressed. They'd had a miscarriage. She wasn't talking about it much. Could I give her space, not pry, just be supportive? I did. When Ashley seemed distant at meetings, I thought, grief. When she mentioned stress about Michael's medical school loans, I offered to help financially. She refused. "We'll manage," she said. I thought it was pride, independence. I respected that. Looking back now, I realize that's when it started. The miscarriage was 2 years ago. The missing money, $45,000, went back 18 months, right after the miscarriage, right when Ashley said she needed space. I gave her space. I gave her trust. I gave her access to the club finances with no oversight, and she took everything. That night, after I got the email, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction with Ashley from the past 3 years, looking for signs I'd missed. At 2 a.m, I got up, went to my home office, found my personal checkbook. I still kept paper records, old habit from my accounting days. I reviewed the past year of statements. There. March 2023. A deposit I didn't remember making, $500. The memo line, reimbursement club expenses. I never submitted expenses for reimbursement. Never. I always paid out of pocket or used the club credit card with receipts documented. I pulled statements from the past 2 years, found 3 more deposits, $500 each, all marked reimbursement. All dated in months when I'd been teaching classes, not submitting expenses. $2,500 deposited into my personal account from the club that I didn't request. I sat at my desk until dawn, looking at those statements. And I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't about $45,000 I'd taken. This was about someone framing me, and that someone was my daughter-in-law. The bank statement arrived on Tuesday, 5 days after the email. I always reviewed them, old habit from my accounting days at the county office. I sat at the kitchen table with my reading glasses and a highlighter. There it was, check number 3847, $8,000, made out to Linda Morrison, deposited to an account I didn't recognize. The signature, L. Morrison, except I didn't write it. I picked up the phone, called the bank, held for 22 minutes listening to instrumental jazz. Finally, a representative, professional, polite. "How can I help you today, Ms. Morrison?" "I'm looking at check 3847 from my garden club account, $8,000. I didn't sign this check." A pause, keyboard clicking. "Ms. Morrison, I'm showing that check was deposited on June 14th, 2023. The signature matches our records for your account." "Can you tell me what account it was deposited to?" "Account ending in 4782. "That's not my account. Mine ends in 9621. More clicking, a longer pause. "Ms. Morrison, I'm going to transfer you to our fraud department. Please hold." Another 15 minutes. Another representative. I explained again. She pulled up the records. "Ms. Morrison, I'm showing 23 checks over the past 18 months with your signature, all deposited to account 4782. Total amount $45,000. 23 checks. I asked her to send copies, all of them. She said she'd mail them within 5 business days. I thanked her, hung up, sat there looking at my own signature on the statement in front of me. The L was wrong, angular, not looped. The baseline was too straight. Mine tilted up slightly at the end. Habit from years of signing budget reports. That wasn't my handwriting. Someone had forged my signature. 23 times. I went to my file cabinet, found the folder labeled Morrison Garden Club, Financial. Bank statements from the past 2 years. I spread them across the dining room table, started checking every transaction against my own records. The withdrawals started in June 2022, small at first. $2,000, then $4,000, then $8,000. The largest single check, $12,000 in March 2023, right after our spring fundraiser. Every check made out to Linda Morrison. Every signature looked like mine, close enough to pass a casual inspection. But none of them were actually mine. I was still sitting there when Margaret called, 6 in the evening. "Linda, are you okay? You didn't answer my text this morning." "I'm fine, just dealing with some things." I heard about the email. From the board. Of course she had. Small organization. Word travels. Margaret, do you know anything about this? About money missing from the club? She was quiet for a moment. Linda, I want to tell you something, but I'm afraid it'll make things worse. Tell me. Ashley's been saying things at meetings about you being forgetful, repeating yourself. She mentioned you forgot a doctor's appointment, said she was worried about your memory. I hadn't forgotten any appointment. I'd rescheduled. There's a difference. What else did she say? That you've been confused about club finances, that she's had to correct mistakes you made with deposits. Linda, I didn't believe it, but some of the younger members did. They don't know you like I do. That stung. 20 years of credibility, and younger members, people who joined in the last 5 years, believed Ashley over me. Margaret, I need to ask you something. Did you ever see me sign checks in person? No, Ashley said she'd handle all of that. She wanted to modernize, remember? Everything online. Everything online, where no one could witness signatures, where transactions happened invisibly. I thanked Margaret, told her I'd call her soon, hung up. That's when I heard the knock at the front door. I looked through the peephole. Ashley, standing on my porch with a casserole dish. My heart started pounding. I almost didn't answer, but I opened the door. Mom, Linda. Ashley smiled, warm, concerned. I brought you dinner. I know you're probably not eating much with all this stress. I didn't invite her in. Stood in the doorway. Ashley, what's going on? Why did the board send that email? She set the casserole on the porch table, looked at me with what appeared to be genuine worry. Mom, Linda, I'm so sorry. I didn't want it to come to this. But there are financial discrepancies, large amounts of money that went to your personal account. The board had to investigate. I didn't take any money. I know this must be confusing for you. Her voice was patient, gentle, like she was talking to a child. Michael told me you've been forgetting things lately. The doctor's appointment last week, I didn't forget. I rescheduled. Are you sure? Because Michael said you called him that day, upset that you'd missed it. I hadn't called Michael. I'd texted him to tell him I'd rescheduled. There's a record of that text. Ashley, I never took money from the club. Someone's made a mistake. She squeezed my hand, sympathetic. Mom, Linda, memory issues are nothing to be ashamed of. My grandmother had the same thing. We got her help. You should talk to your doctor. Maybe get some tests done. I pulled my hand away. My memory is fine. Of course it is. She smiled, picked up the casserole, handed it to me. Chicken and rice, your favorite. Just heat it at 350 for 20 minutes. She kissed my cheek. Take care of yourself. We love you. She left. I stood there holding the casserole, watching her walk to her car. She waved before she drove away. I went inside, set the casserole on the counter, looked at the bank statement still spread across the dining room table, and I realized Ashley wasn't just stealing money. She was building a narrative. Forgetful, confused, memory issues. She was gaslighting me. If I accused her, she'd say I was confused. If I showed evidence, she'd say I didn't understand it. If I protested, she'd say I was in denial about my cognitive decline. She'd spent 2 years setting this up. Not just the theft, the entire framing. I sat at the kitchen table until midnight, going through every bank statement, every transaction, looking for patterns, proof, something concrete that couldn't be dismissed as confusion or memory problems. I found it in the dates. Every major withdrawal happened on Thursday mornings between 10 and noon, garden club meeting time. When I was teaching classes at the community center, when I had witnesses, 10 or 15 people who could confirm exactly where I was. Ashley thought she was clever, stealing during meetings so I wouldn't notice. But she'd given me an alibi. I couldn't take this to the garden club board. They'd already sided with Ashley. I couldn't take it to Michael, not yet. He was caught between his wife and his mother. He'd want to believe Ashley, everyone did. I needed help. Professional help. The next morning, I called Margaret. I need the name of a lawyer, someone who handles financial cases. She didn't ask questions, just said, Susan Chen, Elder law, she's excellent. Want me to call her? Yes, tell her it's urgent. Margaret called me back 20 minutes later. Susan can see you tomorrow, 2 o'clock. I'll go with you if you want. I did want that, but I said, thank you, I'll go alone. I needed to learn how to fight my own battles, starting now. Susan Chen's office was downtown, 3rd floor of a brick building that smelled like old coffee and legal documents. The waiting room had magazines I didn't read, business law journals, elder care newsletters. Margaret had offered to come. I'd said no. This was something I needed to do alone. The receptionist called my name at 2:05. I followed her down a hallway lined with framed degrees. Susan's office was corner view, organized chaos. Files stacked neatly, laptop open, coffee mug that said, litigate first, ask questions later. Susan Chen was maybe 50. Black blazer, no wedding ring, reading glasses on a chain. She stood up when I entered. Firm handshake. Ms. Morrison, please sit. I sat. She sat across from me, pen ready, legal pad open. Tell me what happened. I told her. All of it. The email, the club, Richard's death, Ashley joining as treasurer, the missing money, the forged signatures, the gaslighting, Margaret's warning about younger members believing Ashley's narrative. Susan took notes without interrupting. When I finished, she looked up. Her expression was serious. Ms. Morrison, Linda, this is textbook financial elder abuse. Your daughter-in-law targeted you specifically because of your age, your reputation, your access to club funds. The gaslighting about memory issues? That's a classic strategy. She's building a defense preemptively. I felt cold hearing it stated so plainly. Can we fight it? Susan nodded. We document everything. We get expert analysis. We build an evidence chain that's undeniable. But I need you to understand, this will take time, 6 to 9 months, possibly longer. Depositions, discovery, potentially a trial. It's expensive, it's stressful, and it will get worse before it gets better. How much worse? Ashley will escalate. When cornered, people like this don't back down quietly. She'll double down on the memory narrative. She might try to get Michael to petition for financial guardianship. She'll paint herself as the victim trying to protect a confused elderly woman. I'm 72. I'm not confused. I know that, but we need to prove it, medically, financially, legally. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny? I thought about it, about my kitchen table covered in bank statements, about 20 years of work dismissed in a 2-paragraph email, about Ashley's hand squeezing mine while she suggested I had memory problems. Yes, I'm prepared. Susan smiled. Small, professional. Good, let's get started. She outlined the plan. First, obtain official bank records through subpoena, all transactions from the past 3 years. Second, hire a forensic accountant to analyze the patterns. Third, document examiner to verify the signatures were forged. Fourth, my own medical evaluation to establish cognitive competency. Fifth, police report. It's going to cost money, Susan said. My retainer is $8,000. Forensic accountant, another $5,000. Document examiner, $2,000. We're looking at $15,000 to $20,000 for the full investigation, potentially more if it goes to trial. I had the money. Retirement savings, Richard's life insurance. But it would deplete a significant portion. Do it, I said. Susan extended her hand. We shook. We'll start with the bank records. I'll file the subpoena today. 3 weeks later, I was back in Susan's office, this time with documents. The forensic accountant was Dr. James Patterson, 58, gray beard, testified in over 50 fraud cases. He'd spent 2 weeks analyzing the Garden Club accounts. His report was 63 pages. Susan summarized the key findings. Linda, look at this. She turned her laptop toward me. Bank statements side by side. Left side, Morrison Garden Club account. Right side, account ending in 4782. Highlighted withdrawals. $8,000 in June 2022. $5,000 in September 2022. $12,000 in March 2023. The amounts added up. $45,000 total. She clicked to the next slide. check images, 23 of them, all made out to Linda Morrison, all with my signature. Except they weren't my signatures. Dr. Patterson's analysis showed on the next slide. He'd zoomed in on one check. Notice the L, Susan explained, pointing. Angular peak, horizontal baseline. She overlaid my real signature from my driver's license, my tax returns, my social security card. Your L is looped, ascends slightly. These are forgeries. She showed me another slide. The M in Morrison. Yours has 3 distinct peaks, equal height. The forged signatures have uneven peaks, the middle one's shorter. I stared at the screen. Someone had practiced my signature, studied it, copied it well enough to fool a casual observer, but not well enough to fool an expert. There's more, Susan said. She pulled up a different document. Dr. Patterson analyzed the digital records, every online transfer, and there were 17 of them originated from IP address 192.168.1.47. We traced that address. It's Ashley's home network, not yours. I felt something shift inside me. Relief, maybe, or vindication. This wasn't in my head. This wasn't confusion. This was proof. The timestamps are critical, Susan continued. 6 of the transactions happened on Thursday mornings between 10 and noon. We cross-referenced your phone's GPS data. With your permission, we pulled that, and you were at the community center during every single one, teaching your gardening classes. I have witnesses, I said. 10 people in those classes. Exactly. Ashley made a mistake. She stole during club meetings thinking you wouldn't notice the timing, but she gave you an alibi. Susan showed me one more slide. Security footage. Bank lobby. June 14th, 2023. A woman at the teller window, endorsing a check. Made out to Linda Morrison, Morrison Garden Club. Amount $8,000. The woman deposited it to account 478. The woman was Ashley. I sat in Susan's office, looking at that frozen frame. My daughter-in-law, my son's wife, at a bank teller window, stealing from an organization I'd built. Susan paused. Let me process. Then she said quietly, Linda, I'm going to recommend we file a police report. This isn't just civil fraud. This is criminal embezzlement, forgery, identity theft. What will happen to her? That depends. If she cooperates, maybe probation. If she fights it, potentially jail time. But Linda, Susan leaned forward. This isn't just about Ashley anymore. We found something else in the financial analysis. She pulled up another document, bank statements, online gambling sites, DraftKings, FanDuel, offshore casinos I'd never heard of. Ashley has $60,000 in gambling debts, 4 credit cards all maxed, total $35,000. She's been betting heavily for the past 2 years. The timeline correlates exactly with when the club money started disappearing. I stared at the screen. Dates, amounts, casino names I'd never heard of. I remembered Ashley mentioning stress, the miscarriage, Michael's long shifts at the hospital, her saying they'd manage their finances themselves. She had a problem, I said quietly. She needed money. Yes, and she chose to steal it from you, while simultaneously destroying your reputation to cover her tracks. I sat there in Susan's office, fluorescent lights humming, coffee cold in the styrofoam cup she'd given me, looking at evidence spread across her desk like pieces of a crime show. 20 years of trust, 3 years of planning, and I'd never seen it coming. Susan's voice was gentle. Linda, I need to ask, how are you holding up? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I'm angry, I said, but mostly I'm determined. She nodded. Good, because this fight isn't over. It's just beginning. We spent the next hour building the case. Susan walked me through the evidence chain. 5 types of proof, each supporting the others. Bank records and forensic analysis. Dr. Patterson's 63-page report. Digital forensics. IP addresses. Timestamps. GPS data. Security footage. Ashley at the bank. Professional testimony. Margaret and 2 other founding members had already provided written statements confirming I'd never handled cash alone, always insisted on dual signatures, and Ashley's gambling debts. The motive. "We have one more piece," Susan said. She handed me a document. Expert analysis of the forged checks. Document examiner. Her name's Dr. Elizabeth Moore, 20 years with the FBI. She analyzed the pressure points, pen angle, letter formation. The handwriting doesn't match your verified signatures from other documents, but it does match samples of Ashley's handwriting. Everything connected. Every piece of evidence pointed the same direction. Susan filed the police report that afternoon. Detective Morrison, no relation, ironic coincidence, called me 2 days later. White-collar crime division. He was professional, thorough. Asked the same questions Susan had, took copies of all the evidence, said it would take time, but the case looked strong. "Ms. Morrison, I want you to understand something," he said before we hung up. "This kind of financial elder abuse, it's more common than people think, and it's devastating. Not just financially, emotionally. You're doing the right thing by pursuing this." I thanked him, hung up, sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd read that first email 6 weeks ago, and I realized something. I wasn't the confused old woman Ashley wanted everyone to believe I was. I was someone who'd built a garden club from nothing, who'd raised a son alone after my husband died, who'd negotiated town council meetings and written successful grants and managed budgets for 2 decades. I was someone who knew how to fight. Ashley had miscalculated. She thought age meant weakness. She thought old meant stupid. She was wrong. I couldn't sleep. 3 days after filing the police report, I woke at 4:30 in the morning. The house was dark and quiet. Too quiet. I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about Ashley, about Michael, about what was coming. At 5, I gave up trying, got dressed, drove to the community garden. The parking lot was empty, dawn light just starting to break over the horizon, dew heavy on the grass. I walked through the main gate, the one Richard and I had installed in 2005, the year after he died. My hands built that gate. Margaret held the posts while I secured them. The garden was peaceful this early, no voices, no laughter, just birds and the occasional rustle of leaves. I walked the paths I'd designed 20 years ago. The main artery ran north to south, 6 feet wide, mulched with cedar chips. Side paths branched off like veins, every turn planned, every bed measured. The heritage roses were blooming, 20 varieties I'd introduced over the years. Zephyrine Drouhin, thornless pink climbers, Madame Isaac Pereire, deep purple with that bourbon fragrance, Rosa Mundi, striped red and white. Richard loved roses. We'd planted our first bush together in 1975, Chrysler Imperial, deep red. It lived in our backyard for 38 years until it finally gave up 2 winters ago. I stopped at the butterfly garden, 3 years to establish, native milkweed for monarchs, purple coneflowers for swallowtails, black-eyed Susans that bloomed all summer. Margaret and I had planted every single one. Past that, the perennial beds. Original 6 members had started those. I could still remember the first spring. We'd knelt in the dirt. Dorothy, Patricia, Betty, Carol, Margaret, and me. Dividing hostas, planting daylilies, arguing about spacing. This garden wasn't just a garden. It was 20 years of sweat and soil and hope. It was Richard's memory. It was what kept me alive after he died. Richard died right here, not in this community garden in our backyard, but the same act, the same love of growing things. It was April 3rd, 2004, Saturday afternoon. We were working together. He was pruning tomato plants. I was deadheading roses, spring ritual we'd done for 37 years of marriage. He said my name, Linda. Just that, one word. I looked up. He had his hand over his chest, face gray. He said, "I don't feel good." Then he collapsed. I ran to him, knelt in the dirt beside him, checked for a pulse, called 911. The dispatcher kept me on the phone, walked me through CPR, compressions, counting, breathing. The paramedics arrived in 12 minutes. They worked on him for 23 more, but he was already gone. Massive heart attack. Nothing anyone could have done. They were kind, those paramedics. Professional. They said I did everything right, but Richard was still dead. I was 61 years old, widow, alone. For 6 months, I didn't leave the house unless I had to. Didn't answer the phone, didn't garden. The tomato plants Richard had been pruning died from neglect. I couldn't even look at them. Margaret saved me. Showed up one morning with coffee cake and wouldn't leave until I agreed to come to a meeting about the community garden project. Just one meeting. That meeting became 6 women sitting in my living room, planning beds, drawing diagrams, and for the first time in 6 months, I felt like myself. We called it the Morrison Garden Club. Margaret insisted. Richard loved that garden, Linda. Let's make it his legacy, too. So I did. I built this legacy. From grief and dirt and determination, I gave 20 years, $8,000 of my own money, countless hours, my backyard as a teaching ground, my expertise freely shared, and Ashley tried to take it. Not just the money, my reputation, my credibility, my standing in a community I'd served for 2 decades. She called me confused, forgetful, suggested I had memory problems, all while stealing $45,000 and forging my name on 23 checks. I stood in the center of the butterfly garden, watching the sun come up over the eastern fence. The light caught the dew on the coneflowers, made everything sparkle, and I realized something. I'd spent 3 weeks apologizing to the board, to members who doubted me, to Michael when he'd asked if maybe, possibly, I'd made a mistake, trying to prove I was competent, reliable, trustworthy, still worthy of respect at 72. I was done with that. Ashley had spent 3 years planning this. She had time, digital fluency, a convincing narrative about a confused elderly woman who couldn't manage finances anymore. But I had 20 years of credibility, a forensic accountant with 63 pages of proof, a lawyer who specialized in financial elder abuse, security footage, police involvement, and a determination that surprised even me. The playing field wasn't even, but I wasn't quitting. I sat on the bench near the Heritage Roses, the same bench where Richard and I used to sit on summer evenings, planning next year's plantings, where he'd proposed 48 years ago, down on one knee with a ring box and a nervous smile. I looked at the roses we'd planted together, varieties I'd propagated over 20 years, and I knew this wasn't about money. It was about refusing to disappear quietly, about dignity, independence, proving that old didn't mean powerless. Ashley had made a fundamental miscalculation. She thought I'd accept the blame, sign papers, fade away, let her have the narrative. She was wrong. I pulled out my phone, called Susan Chen. It was 6:15 in the morning. She answered on the 3rd ring. Linda, everything okay? I want a deposition, I said. I want every piece of evidence on record, and I'm not settling. Susan paused. I could hear her thinking, Linda, depositions are brutal. They'll try to rattle you, question your memory, your competence, your motives. It's invasive and exhausting. I know. It could take months, cost more money, and there's no guarantee. Susan, I interrupted, I'm not backing down. Schedule it. Another pause. Then, okay, I'll start the paperwork today. I thanked her, hung up, sat on that bench watching the morning light spread across the garden I'd built. 20 years, 1 woman, 6 original members grown to 65, 3 gardens, a legacy. Nobody was taking that from me without a fight. Susan filed the paperwork for depositions 3 days after I called her from the garden. The legal machinery started moving, slowly, methodically. Discovery phase ran from February through August. 6 months of document requests, subpoenas, motions, counter motions. Susan requested every Garden Club financial record from 2021 through 2024. Bank statements, receipts, grant applications, membership rosters, meeting minutes. Ashley's lawyer fought it, filed motions to dismiss, requested extensions, claimed invasion of privacy. The judge denied every single one. The defendant is accused of embezzlement, he said at one hearing I attended. Financial records are material to the case. Ashley had to produce everything: her bank statements, credit card records, cell phone data, email correspondence. Her lawyer claimed it was harassment. Susan called it due process. Depositions were scheduled, mine in May, Ashley's in July, Margaret's in June. Susan prepared me through 3 separate sessions, mock questions, practice answers. They'll try to rattle you, she warned. Stay calm, stick to facts, don't get emotional. I practiced answering questions about my age, my memory, my decision-making, over and over until the words felt rehearsed, mechanical. Meanwhile, the police investigation continued. Detective Morrison interviewed club members, reviewed the bank records Susan had obtained, cross-referenced my alibi for transaction dates. I'd been teaching gardening classes when most withdrawals happened. 10 witnesses confirmed my whereabouts, every single time. The costs kept climbing. Susan's retainer, $8,000. Forensic accountant, $5,000. Document examiner, $2,000. Deposition preparation, another $3,000. Total so far, $18,000. My retirement savings shrinking with each invoice. Susan offered payment plans. I said no. I'll pay. This was my reputation, my legacy, worth every dollar. But some days, I wondered if I could actually afford to fight, not just financially, emotionally. The garden club split, not officially, but in practice. Younger members, people who'd joined in the last 5 years, most in their 40s and 50s, believed Ashley's version. The tech-savvy treasurer trying to help a confused founder who couldn't adapt to modern financial systems. They posted on social media supportive messages about elder care and compassion and protecting vulnerable seniors from their own mistakes. The irony wasn't lost on me. They were accusing me of elder abuse by proxy, of setting Ashley up, of being the villain. Older members, the original founders, people who'd known me for 2 decades, stayed loyal, but quietly. They didn't post on social media, didn't make public declarations. They texted privately, brought casseroles, asked if I needed anything. Margaret was vocal, attended the preliminary hearing in April, sat in the front row behind me, squeezed my shoulder when the prosecutor outlined the charges against Ashley: embezzlement, forgery, identity theft. Dorothy Palmer, the retired accountant, stopped me after a chance encounter at the grocery store. "Linda, I'm with you. The new bylaws we implement after this, they'll make sure it never happens again." She'd already drafted proposals: dual signatures mandatory, quarterly audits, term limits for treasurer. Patricia Chen, no relation to Susan, sent a card. 20 years of integrity don't disappear because of one person's lies. We know who you are. But publicly, most people stayed silent, waiting to see which way the wind blew. My book club ladies were different. Jean, Carol, and Ruth. We'd met monthly for 15 years. Romance novels and Pinot Grigio. They called a special meeting at Jean's house, just the 4 of us. "We know Ashley's lying," Ruth said. She was 76, former school principal, no nonsense. "And we're going to testify if you need us, about your memory, your competence, whatever it takes." I cried. First time since this whole thing started. Just sat on Jean's couch and cried while 3 women I'd known for 15 years handed me tissues and refilled my wine glass. "You're not alone," Carol said. "We've got you." Michael was another story. He called in late April. His voice was strained, tired. "Mom, can I come over? We need to talk." He came that evening. Didn't bring Ashley. Sat at the kitchen table where he'd eaten breakfast as a child. Drank coffee from his old Batman mug I'd kept for 30 years. "Mom, I need to ask you something." He couldn't look at me. stared at his coffee instead. "Did you take money from the club?" That hurt. More than I expected. "No, I didn't. Ashley has bank statements, deposits to your account, $500 each. She says—" I know what she says. Those deposits were fraudulent. I never requested them, never authorized them. Ashley put them there to frame me. Why would she do that? She has $60,000 in gambling debts, Michael. She needed money. She took it from the club. When I started asking questions, she planted evidence against me. He shook his head. Ashley doesn't gamble. She buys lottery tickets sometimes, but the police have her bank records. DraftKings, FanDuel, offshore casinos, 2 years of betting, $60,000 in debts. Michael looked at me then. Really looked. I could see him trying to reconcile the wife he knew with the person I was describing. She told me you were making things up, that you're confused, that the stress is making you paranoid. I have a lawyer, a forensic accountant, police involvement, security footage of Ashley depositing club checks into her personal account. That's not confusion, that's evidence. He was quiet for a long time. Then, "Mom, can you just let this go? For me?" I stared at him. Let it go? Ashley and I are trying to start a family. IVF. It's expensive and stressful, and this whole legal thing is destroying her. She's willing to apologize. Privately. Work out a payment plan. Can't that be enough? I understood then. Ashley had sent him. Last manipulation. Use his loyalty, his love, his desire for peace. "Michael, if I let it go, everyone believes I stole from the club I founded. Your mother becomes the woman who embezzled money and blamed her daughter-in-law. Is that what you want?" He pulled his hand away, stood up. "I want my family to stop falling apart." He left, didn't say goodbye, just walked out. I heard his car start in the driveway, watched through the window as he drove away. I sat at the kitchen table until dark, didn't turn on the lights, just sat there in the empty house thinking about my son choosing his wife over his mother. Margaret called twice. I didn't answer. The settlement offer came in May. Ashley's lawyer sent it through Susan. Professional letterhead, legal language. But the message was simple. Give up. Go away. Stay quiet. Terms. Linda Morrison resigns from Morrison Garden Club permanently, signs non-disclosure agreement prohibiting discussion of the case, pays $10,000 in restitution, partial repayment, no admission of guilt. In exchange, Ashley drops the criminal complaint, no civil suit, case closed. Susan walked me through it in her office, neutral voice, professional. "Linda, it's not uncommon. Settlements avoid trial. Save money, end the stress. You could move on with your life." I looked at the document, 3 pages, legal boilerplate, my signature line at the bottom. If I signed, I'd have peace. Michael would have peace. Ashley would have peace. But everyone would think I was guilty. Quiet resignation equals admission. My legacy becomes the confused founder who stole from her own club, got caught, paid restitution, and disappeared. "How much will trial cost?" I asked. "Conservatively, another $20,000 to $30,000, and there's no guarantee. Juries are unpredictable." "What do you think I should do?" Susan set down her pen, looked at me directly. "I think you have a strong case. I think the evidence is overwhelming. But I also think you need to decide what matters more, peace or justice." I thought about it, really thought. Peace meant safety, no more depositions, no more legal fees, no more fighting. But justice meant truth. My name cleared. Ashley held accountable. The garden club protected. "If I sign this," I said slowly, "people will believe I took that money, that I'm guilty. That everything Ashley said about me being confused and forgetful is true." "Probably," Susan said. "And my legacy, 20 years of work, becomes a cautionary tale about an old woman who couldn't handle finances anymore." "Yes." I picked up the pen, looked at the signature line. Thought about Richard, about the garden we'd built, about Margaret bringing coffee cake for 20 years, about Dorothy already drafting new bylaws, about Ruth offering to testify, about the Morrison Memorial Garden that might not bear my name if I signed this paper. I set the pen down. "No," I said. "We go forward." Susan smiled. Small, professional. "I was hoping you'd say that." The deposition was scheduled for July 26th, Thursday, 10 in the morning. Susan's law firm had a conference room on the 4th floor, long table, leather chairs, windows overlooking downtown, professional, impersonal, the kind of room where careers ended and lives changed. I arrived at 9:45. Susan met me in the lobby. "Ready?" I nodded. I'd been preparing for this for 3 months. We took the elevator up, walked down a hallway that smelled like coffee and stress. Susan opened the conference room door. Ashley was already there, sitting across from where I'd be. Her lawyer beside her. Daniel Crawford, mid-40s, expensive suit, reputation for aggressive defense. Michael sat next to Ashley. He didn't look at me when I entered. Dr. James Patterson was setting up his laptop at the head of the table. Forensic accountant. The man who'd spent 2 weeks analyzing bank records and found every piece of evidence. Court reporter in the corner. Stenography machine ready. Susan pulled out a chair for me. I sat, folded my hands on the table, looked at my daughter-in-law across 6 feet of polished wood. Ashley looked tired, thinner than I remembered. Hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked at me once, then away. The mediator arrived at 10 exactly. Judge Patricia Whitmore, retired. She'd volunteered to oversee the deposition, keep things civil, professional. "We're on the record," she said. The court reporter's fingers started moving. Dr. Patterson went first. He pulled up his laptop, projector on. The far wall lit up with a spreadsheet. Morrison Garden Club financial records. 3 years. Every transaction. I was hired by Ms. Morrison's attorney to analyze the Garden Club accounts, Dr. Patterson began. His voice was measured, academic. What I found was a systematic pattern of embezzlement over 18 months. He clicked. The spreadsheet zoomed in, highlighted withdrawals, yellow cells, $8,000. June 2022, $5,000. September 2022, $12,000. March 2023, total amount withdrawn, $45,300. He clicked again. Side-by-side view. Left, Morrison Garden Club account. Right, another account. These funds were deposited into account ending in 4782, not Ms. Morrison's account. Ashley's lawyer leaned forward. "Your Honor, we've stipulated that money was withdrawn. The question is, who authorized—" "I'll get to that," Dr. Patterson interrupted. He clicked. Check images filled the screen. 23 checks, all made out to Linda Morrison, all signed L. Morrison. Dr. Patterson zoomed in on one check. Check number 3847, $8,000. The signature, L. Morrison. He overlaid another image. My actual signature. Driver's license, tax return, social security card. "Notice the L," he said using a laser pointer. "The forged signature has an angular peak, horizontal baseline. Ms. Morrison's authentic signature has a loop. The stem ascends slightly." Showed 5 more examples, each one the same. Forged signatures, angular, mine looped. "The M in Morrison," he continued. "Authentic signature, 3 equal peaks. Forged, uneven. The middle peak is consistently shorter." He clicked through 15 more checks. Same pattern, every single one. These signatures were written by someone studying Ms. Morrison's handwriting. Good enough to pass casual inspection, not good enough to pass forensic analysis. Ashley stared at the wall. Her lawyer took notes. Dr. Patterson pulled up another slide. Digital forensics, every online transfer, 17 total. Originated from IP address 192.1168.1.47. He showed the trace results. That address belongs to a home network at 428 Maple Street, Susan interjected. That's the defendant's address, Ashley Chen Morrison's home. Correct, Dr. Patterson confirmed. We also analyzed timestamps. 6 transactions occurred on Thursday mornings between 10 and noon. We cross-referenced Ms. Morrison's phone GPS data with her permission and her location during those times. A map appeared. Red pins. Morrison Community Center. Every single one. Ms. Morrison was teaching gardening classes. 10 witnesses confirmed her presence. She couldn't have been home making online transfers and simultaneously teaching across town. He clicked one more time. Security footage, black and white, bank lobby, June 14, 2023. Timestamp 11:47 a.m. A woman at the teller window endorsing a check, made out to Linda Morrison, Morrison Garden Club, $8,000. The woman was Ashley. The room was silent except for the court reporter's machine. Dr. Patterson sat down. Susan called her first witness, Margaret Hayes. Margaret walked in, took the seat where Dr. Patterson had been. She looked nervous, glanced at me. I tried to smile reassurance. Susan asked, Miss Hayes, how long have you known Linda Morrison? 30 years. We're neighbors. I live 3 houses down. And you co-founded the Morrison Garden Club with her? Yes, 20 years ago, after her husband died. Can you describe Ms. Morrison's role in club finances over those 20 years? Margaret straightened, spoke clearly. Linda was meticulous. She insisted on transparency, dual signatures on every check over $500, receipts documented, bank statements reviewed at board meetings. She never handled cash alone, never. That was a rule she established from day one. Did that policy change? Yes. When Ashley became treasurer 3 years ago, she said dual signatures were inefficient, old-fashioned. The board voted to eliminate the requirement. Did Ms. Morrison approve that change? Margaret hesitated. She didn't argue against it, but I could tell she was uncomfortable. She said to me privately, I hope we're not making a mistake. In 20 years, did you ever see any indication that Ms. Morrison was confused about club finances? Never. She could recite our budget from memory, knew every grant deadline, every member's dues status. Her mind is sharp. Susan thanked her. Margaret stepped down, squeezed my shoulder as she passed. The bank manager testified next. Rebecca Foster, professional, crisp suit, 12 years at First National. Ms. Foster, your bank handled the Morrison Garden Club account? Yes, since 2004. In March 2024, Ms. Morrison reported suspicious activity. What happened? She called about a check she didn't recognize, $8,000. We pulled the transaction. The signature looked authentic at first glance, but when we investigated further, we found 22 more checks with similar irregularities. What did your investigation reveal? The checks were deposited to account 4782, owned by Ashley Chen Morrison, not Linda Morrison's account. Did Ms. Morrison have access to account 4782? No, she's not listed as an account holder or authorized user. Susan submitted copies of the bank's fraud investigation report. 3 witnesses from the original founding members gave brief statements. Consistent. Linda never handled money alone, always transparent. Then it was Ashley's turn. Crawford, her lawyer, tried deflection first. Ms. Morrison is 72 years old. Is it possible she simply forgot authorizing these transactions? Susan objected. We've established through GPS data and witnesses that she wasn't present for 6 of the transactions. She can't forget authorizing something that happened while she was teaching a class across town. Judge Whitmore sustained. Crawford tried again. My client has cooperated fully, provided all requested documents. The gambling issue. Let's discuss that, Susan interrupted. She pulled up a document. Your Honor, I'm entering Exhibit 14, Ms. Chen Morrison's bank statements, DraftKings, FanDuel, multiple offshore gambling sites. The screen filled with transactions, hundreds of them, withdrawals, deposits, losses. Total gambling expenditure over 2 years, $63,000 credit card debt, $35,000 across 4 cards. Total debt, $98,000. Ashley closed her eyes. The timeline is notable, Susan continued. The gambling intensified in June 2022, the same month the first garden club withdrawal occurred. Crawford leaned over, whispered to Ashley. She shook her head, whispered back. Your Honor, Crawford said, my client would like to make a statement. Judge Whitmore nodded. Ashley took a breath, looked at the table. Not at me, not at Michael, just the table. I had a problem, she said quietly. Gambling. It started after I had a miscarriage. I couldn't stop. I kept thinking the next bet would fix everything. Pay back what I'd taken before anyone noticed. Her voice cracked. I told myself Linda wouldn't miss it. The club had money, grants coming in. I thought I could replace it. Why didn't you just ask for help? Susan asked. I was ashamed. Michael's in medicine. He doesn't believe in gambling. I couldn't tell him. And Linda, she looked up then, met my eyes. You would have helped, I know that, but I couldn't admit I had a problem. So you stole $45,000 instead. Ashley flinched. Yes. And when Ms. Morrison started asking questions, you accused her of taking the money herself. I panicked. I thought if I could make people believe she was confused, forgetful, they wouldn't listen to her. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Michael stood up. Ashley, Michael, stop. She wiped her eyes. I did this, all of it. The checks, the deposits, the lies about her memory. I framed my husband's mother because I was desperate and stupid, and I couldn't face what I'd become. She looked at me again. Linda, I'm sorry. I destroyed your reputation to save myself. That's unforgivable. The room was quiet. Even the court reporter had stopped. Michael sat down, put his head in his hands. Crawford asked for a recess. Judge Whitmore granted 30 minutes. Susan and I stepped into an empty office down the hall. That was Ashley's crack, Susan said. She admitted everything on record. Crawford knows his case is dead. He'll negotiate. What happens now? They'll offer a plea deal, admission of guilt, restitution, probation, maybe counseling. In exchange, no jail time. Felony on her record, but she avoids prison. What do you think I should do? Susan sat on the edge of the desk. I think you've already won. Ashley admitted guilt in front of witnesses. Your name is cleared. The question is, do you want punishment or do you want resolution? I thought about Michael's face, about Ashley crying, about 20 years of my reputation being restored. I want resolution, I said. We reconvened. Crawford presented the plea offer. Ashley would plead guilty to embezzlement and forgery, pay full restitution, $45,300 at $500 per month, 5 years probation, 200 hours community service, mandatory gambling counseling through Gamblers Anonymous, felony conviction on record. Susan looked at me. Linda? I looked at Ashley. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. I accept, I said. On one condition? Crawford frowned. What condition? The garden club gets a formal apology in writing. Read at the next board meeting. I want my members to hear it. Ashley nodded. I'll do it. Judge Whitmore made it official. Ms. Chen Morrison pleads guilty. Sentencing in 30 days. Court adjourned. Outside the building, Michael caught up with me in the parking lot. Mom, wait. I stopped, turned around. I'm sorry, he said. His voice broke. I should have believed you. From the beginning. I chose wrong. I looked at my son, 42 years old, crying in a parking lot. You chose your wife, I said. That's not wrong. That's marriage. She lied to me for 2 years. Used me. I don't know if I can... He couldn't finish. You'll figure it out. You're strong. You'll get through this. Will you forgive me? I thought about it. Really thought. Ask me again in a few months, when the dust settles. He nodded. Understood. I got in my car, drove home, sat in my driveway for 20 minutes before I went inside. When the mediator had read the settlement terms, I hadn't felt triumphant. Just tired, relieved, but mostly tired. 20 years to build, 3 years to tear down, 6 months to rebuild. Justice didn't feel like victory. It felt like exhaustion. The Garden Club called an emergency meeting 2 weeks after the deposition, August 12th, Thursday, 10 in the morning, same time as always. Margaret picked me up. "You ready?" I wasn't sure, but I said yes. The community center was full, 63 members, more than I'd seen at a meeting in years, young and old. The people who'd believed Ashley, the people who'd believed me, all of them there. I walked in. The room went quiet. Then Dorothy Palmer started clapping. Slow at first, then Margaret joined, then Patricia, then the whole room. I stood there by the door while 63 people applauded. I cried, couldn't help it. Margaret handed me tissues from her purse. She always had tissues. Dorothy called the meeting to order, read the board statement, official apology for the email, the investigation, the way they'd handled everything. Effective immediately, Linda Morrison was restored as founder emeritus, full voting rights, full access to facilities. Then Ashley's written apology was read. Crawford had helped her write it. Professional, contrite, brief. To the members of the Morrison Garden Club, I stole $45,000 from this organization over 18 months. I forged Linda Morrison's signature on 23 checks. I lied about her competence and her memory to cover my theft. I destroyed her reputation to protect myself. There's no excuse for what I did. I'm deeply sorry. I will repay every dollar. I hope someday you can forgive me, though I don't deserve it. Sincerely, Ashley Chen Morrison. The room was silent after Dorothy finished reading. Then Margaret spoke. I move that we implement new financial safeguards, dual signatures mandatory, quarterly audits, term limits for treasurer. The motion passed unanimously. Dorothy was elected new treasurer. 73 years old, retired accountant. No nonsense. She implemented the bylaws within a week. Triple signatures on everything. Online banking with 2-factor authentication. Monthly reports posted publicly. The club voted on one more thing. Rename the main community garden. Linda and Richard Morrison Memorial Garden. I cried again. Ashley's sentencing was September 4th. I didn't attend. Susan went, called me afterward with the details. 5 years probation, $45,300 restitution at $500 per month, 90 months, 7.5 years of payments, 200 hours community service, mandatory attendance at Gamblers Anonymous, twice weekly for 2 years, and the felony conviction on her permanent record. She can't be treasurer of anything ever again, Susan said. Can't handle money for any nonprofit. Can't work in finance. The felony conviction follows her. How did she react? She accepted it. Didn't argue. Her lawyer tried to negotiate down the community service hours. Judge said no. Ashley would also have to attend financial literacy classes, pay court fees, submit to random audits of her personal accounts for the duration of probation. It's a strong deterrent case, Susan told me. The prosecutor said it'll be used as an example in elder abuse prevention training. I didn't feel vindicated, just done. Michael and Ashley separated in late August. He moved into a rental apartment downtown, called me 3 weeks after the deposition. Mom, can I come by? He came on a Sunday, brought coffee, the good kind, from the cafe I like. We sat in the garden, Richard's old tomato bed. I'd replanted it in July, heirloom varieties, Cherokee purple, Brandywine, the ones Richard used to grow. Michael didn't make excuses for Ashley, didn't ask me to forgive her, just said, I'm sorry, Mom. I chose wrong. I should have believed you from the start. You chose your wife. That's what you're supposed to do. No, Mom. I chose convenience. I chose not wanting to see the truth. He set down the tomato steak, looked at me. Every time you tried to talk to me about the money, I shut you down. When you mentioned the bank statements, I said you were stressed. When Margaret called me worried, I told her you were getting older. Things were confusing for you. I used your age as an excuse to ignore what was happening." His voice cracked. "I keep replaying the last 2 years. Every time Ashley said she was stressed. Every time she bought expensive wine we couldn't afford. Every time I defended her to you, I chose wrong at every single turn. And you paid the price. She lied to me for 2 years about the gambling, the money, everything. I don't know if I can get past that." "Are you going to divorce her?" He stared at the tomatoes. "I don't know yet. We're in counseling. My idea. She's in therapy too, court-ordered and voluntary. Says she wants to get better. I just don't know if I can trust her again." I reached over, squeezed his hand. "You'll figure it out. Take your time." "Do you forgive me?" I thought about it. The same question he'd asked in the parking lot. I'd said ask me in a few months. "I'm working on it," I said honestly. "It hurt. A lot, but you're my son. We'll get there." He helped me stake the tomato plants, tied them up with twine. We worked in silence for an hour, just being together, not talking about Ashley or lawyers or depositions, just tying up tomatoes like we used to when he was a kid. When he left, he hugged me, first time in months. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too." Margaret and I went back to our Thursday routine, garden club meeting, diner afterward, same booth, same waitress. Helen, been there 32 years now. BLT for me, tuna melt for Margaret. We talked about roses, about the spring plant sale, about new member applications. Waiting list was up to 18 people. Margaret said, "I should have spoken up sooner. When Ashley eliminated the dual signatures, when she started saying things about your memory, I stayed quiet because I didn't want to cause drama." "You testified when it mattered," I said. "That's what counts." She squeezed my hand across the table. "The new treasurer? Dorothy? She's implementing triple signatures on everything. We learned our lesson." We had. The hard way. Susan Chen called me a month after the sentencing. "Linda, I wanted to run something by you. I'm putting together a seminar series. Elder Financial Abuse Prevention. Legal Aid is co-sponsoring. Would you be willing to speak? Share your story?" I thought about it. Standing in front of strangers, talking about Ashley, about being accused, about fighting back. What would I say? Whatever you want. Warning signs, how you recognize something was wrong, what you wish you'd known earlier, how you built your case, the lessons you learned. Let me think about it. I called her back 3 days later. Yes, I'll do it. We started speaking at senior centers in October. Susan handled the legal aspects. I told my story. Not about Ashley specifically. I didn't use names, just the facts, the patterns, the red flags I'd ignored. After the first talk, a woman came up to me, 78, crying. My daughter's been taking money. I thought I was the only one. I gave her Susan's card, gave her Margaret's number, my email address. "You're not alone," I said. "File a police report. Document everything. Get help." She called me 2 weeks later. She'd filed a report, hired a lawyer, started building her case. That's what Ashley didn't understand. She tried to silence me by stealing my reputation. Instead, she gave me a voice. I updated my will in October. Comprehensive. Everything spelled out. No ambiguity. Medical power of attorney went to my brother in Ohio, not Michael. Not yet. Maybe someday when trust rebuilt. Financial power of attorney to Susan Chen. Professional, trustworthy. Someone with no personal stake. Trust fund established for future grandchildren, if Michael has them. Managed by independent trustee at First National Bank. Everything documented, notarized, filed with the county. Susan reviewed it. "This is good, Linda. Thorough. Protects you from any future issues." "I learned," I said. "Love your family, but protect yourself legally." She smiled. "That's what I tell all my clients." The garden club held its fall plant sale in October, first one since the deposition. I wasn't sure I wanted to go. Too many memories. Too much had changed. Margaret texted at 8 in the morning. Plant sale. We need you. I went. When I arrived, members were setting up tables, arranging pots, hanging signs. Same as every year. Dorothy saw me, waved me over. Linda, can you help with the rose section? Nobody knows the varieties like you do. So I did. Spent 3 hours explaining Rosa Mundi versus Zéphirine Drouhin to customers, recommending companion plants, answering questions about soil pH and pruning schedules, just like old times. We raised $12,000 that day, highest total in 5 years. Dorothy announced it at closing. The members cheered. Margaret hugged me. We're back. Maybe we were. The Garden Club newsletter came out in November, first issue since the deposition. Cover photo, me and Dorothy standing in front of the newly renamed Morrison Memorial Garden. Sign visible behind us, heritage roses in bloom. Inside, my photo restored to the founder section, bio updated. Linda Morrison, founder emeritus. Co-founded Morrison Garden Club in 2004 with Margaret Hayes. 20 years of service. Currently teaches beginner gardening classes and serves on the Finance Oversight Committee. Margaret framed a copy, gave it to me at Thanksgiving. For your wall, where it belongs. I hung it in my kitchen, right where the 20-year anniversary photo used to be. New chapter, same legacy. 6 months later, I'm teaching again. Thursday mornings, 10 o'clock. Beginner's gardening class at the Morrison Community Center. Same room where Margaret and I sat 20 years ago with 4 other women planning our first perennial bed. Today there are 12 students, most of them in their 60s and 70s. A few younger, they want to learn about heritage roses, propagation techniques, how to divide perennials without killing them. I'm not the club president anymore. I don't need to be. Dorothy runs the finances. Margaret handles membership. Patricia coordinates volunteers. The club operates smoothly without me at the helm. I show up on Thursdays, teach, answer questions. Then Margaret and I go to the diner. Same booth, same waitress. BLT for me. Tuna melt for Margaret. We talk about next month's plant sale, about the new members, about roses, normal, forward. I live alone in the house Richard and I bought in 1983, 42 years in the same place. Too big for one person, my brother says when he visits. I don't care. It's mine. My garden, my kitchen, my rules. Michael visits on Sundays. We're rebuilding. Slowly. He's still in counseling, still figuring out his marriage. Ashley completed her community service hours last month. Still paying restitution, still attending GA meetings. I don't ask about her. Michael doesn't volunteer information. Maybe someday we'll talk about it. Not yet. Margaret texts every morning at 8. Coffee? One word. 20 years of friendship. She's been my constant through everything. My book club ladies check on me. Jean brings casseroles when I'm tired. Carol calls when I'm quiet. Ruth offers to testify if I ever need her again. She says it like a joke, but she means it. Susan Chen and I have lunch quarterly, not attorney-client anymore. Friends. She refers other seniors to me when they're dealing with financial abuse. I talk them through the process, the emotions, the decisions, how to build a case, when to settle, when to fight. But I don't need them to be okay. I learned that. Independence isn't loneliness. It's freedom. I speak now. Once a month, sometimes twice. Senior centers, retirement communities, church groups, legal aid workshops on elder financial abuse. I don't name Ashley. Don't tell the whole story. Just the patterns. The warning signs I ignored. Someone you trust who insists on controlling finances, who isolates you from oversight, who suggests you're confused when you ask questions. Trust yourself first, I tell them. Get a second opinion, yes. Hire professionals, absolutely. But don't let anyone make you doubt your own reality. Susan says I've helped 22 seniors file reports in 8 months. 15 cases are under active investigation. 4 have resulted in convictions or plea deals. The amounts vary: $12,000, $60,000, $200,000. The relationships vary too: adult children, caregivers, financial advisors, helpful neighbors. But the pattern is always the same: someone trusted, exploiting someone vulnerable. Last month, after a talk in Springfield, a woman approached me. 78. Her son was taking money. She'd suspected for months but didn't want to believe it. I gave her Susan's card, my email address. Document everything, I said. Talk to a lawyer, file a police report. You're not crazy, you're not confused. If something feels wrong, it probably is. She called me 2 weeks later. She'd filed the report, hired an attorney. Her son was being investigated. She's number 23. That's what this became. Not just about clearing my name, about helping others recognize what I didn't see until it was almost too late. The Morrison Memorial Garden opened officially in March. Dedication ceremony, small plaque. Linda and Richard Morrison Memorial Garden, founded 2004 in honor of 20 years of service and dedication to our community. Margaret made a speech, short, sweet, about friendship and roses and grief turned into purpose. I didn't speak, just stood there looking at the garden Richard and I had imagined, the roses we'd planned, the beds we'd designed together in our backyard before he died. This was always supposed to be our legacy. Together. Even though he's been gone 20 years, it still is. Some days, I still can't believe it happened, that my daughter-in-law stole from me, that my son doubted me, that I had to hire lawyers and forensic accountants and fight for my own reputation. But I'm here. I'm standing. The Garden Club has 68 members now. 3 more joined since the deposition. The spring plant sale raised $13,000. Dorothy implemented bylaws that protect everyone. Margaret still brings coffee cake to meetings, and nobody, not Ashley, not anyone, is going to make me doubt myself again. I'm 72 years old. I founded a garden club that changed my community. I raised a son. I built a legacy. I survived betrayal and fought back and won. Not because I'm special, because I refuse to disappear quietly. If you're watching this, and someone's making you doubt yourself, document everything. Trust your instincts. Get professional help. Don't try to handle it alone, and don't settle just to keep the peace. Sometimes peace costs too much. What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments. This morning, I walked through the Morrison Memorial Garden at sunrise. Heritage roses blooming, Zéphirine Druchin, Madame Isaac Pereire, Rosamundi. The varieties Richard and I loved, the beds we planned, the legacy we built. The garden doesn't care about accusations or depositions or family drama. It just grows. Because someone tends it. I tend it. Every Thursday. With Margaret. With Dorothy. With 68 members who show up and plant and weed and water. That's what survives. Not the betrayal, not the fight. The work, the community, the roses. I'm rebuilding, not the life I planned. But mine. Some days are hard. Most days are good. And that's enough.